So you're a bit of a bird fan, huh? You just want to be a dubious bird that'll probably just get banned half the time if we don't have a currently obnoxious character that makes people say, 10 ranked games a week's enough for me.
Chain has deployed interhood ballistic missiles live on chain. Simply think of your ops hood, and our new patented technology will take care of the rest.
Griffin is an incredibly powerful character in Starward that is capable of shifting between untouchable zoning or violent layered mix-ups in your face. A big part of what helps her with this is her designated flight mode and spread wings, giving her an entirely different set of weapons and moves that I wouldn't fault you for considering her to be a stance character. With little overlap between ammo counts in these modes, she can have a frighteningly high tempo and uptime to pester and punish her opponents. I, by full admission, am likely only an intermediate player at best, despite having reached the highest rank in the game before. For this reason, this guide for Griffin is mostly catered towards newbies looking to pick her up or give some inspiration and ideas to intermediate players. I've previously created a text version of this guide that'll be linked below, as well as the English wiki, which I also work on, though I expect a few differences, and those will be updated more than this video obviously if things change on her in the future. On screen now, I'll show you what we'll be covering in this guide, and I'll also include some timestamps so you can skip to what seems most important to you, though I do recommend going through from top to bottom if you're entirely new to her. Without further ado, let's start from the top, where we'll see why you may or may not want to learn Griffin. Let's first start with reasons you might want to pick up Griffin. If you enjoy wide movesets with a large variety of tools such as counter zoning, landing punishing, or high priority melee to cover all options, you'll feel right at home with her. And slowly, you'll be able to integrate more and more of them into your core game plan. This also comes with the benefit of relatively easy ammo management. Griffin possesses some of the highest damage and flashiest combos in the entire game that, unlike many other characters with similar claims like Zhao Ling, hers are naturally harder to cut due to her movements, as well as having safe options to end them before defending herself. Being able to adjust her playstyle on the fly, as she can pretty easily compete at most ranges in the game, which not only means she pairs well with many partners, but can switch to front or back depending on the current game state and the health economy. Or just because birds are really cool and you want to float high above people and annoy them. And by that I mean you just want to play a strong character. So what are some reasons that you might not want to pick up Griffin? Griffin's mechanical execution is certainly on the higher end of the cast currently as of May 2025, so if that's something you're not comfortable with, you will not be getting as much out of her as you can, though her basics are not too outrageous by any means. Even though she has many tools that are strong in multiple situations, you'll find some oddities with many of them, sometimes leading to confusing interactions if you aren't familiar with them. I know this can be a frustrating feeling for many people, so I felt like it's worth mentioning. While situational awareness is vital for all characters and players in this game, Griffin's is very important to her to maximize her impact in any given match. She must constantly adjust her confirms and combos to stay safe or push for more damage. While she does also currently have the highest base health in the game, her melee game has no gimmicks like super armor that many other melee specialists like Alice or Valkia do, so she has to be careful with her positioning and spacing. Now that we're sure you want to play Griffin, let's start with probably the main reason you're here. What do I do with this character? First, I'd like to walk you through what I consider her 6 main moves, and how we will structure the foundation of her gameplay with them. Let's start immediately with the most important part of being the bird that ruins lobbies, the ability to fly. Spread wings, or just generically called flight, which I'll use pretty interchangeably, is accessed by hitting her sub-melee button. Once activated, she will constantly hover with slow boost drain, and can move freely on that plane with normal movement. She can also hold the button while activating it to continuously gain height, allowing her to quickly ascend more efficiently than just holding ascend would. As I had mentioned earlier, her entire moveset changes in spread wings, and very little of the ammo is actually shared with her non-flight state. Sure, this move sounds pretty interesting, but why is it so incredibly strong? Let's look at the unique properties that spread wings possesses. One of the most important aspects to know about when she enters flight is that it actually cuts tracking, as is indicated with the dodge text above her while doing it. If you are a truly new player, this means that attacks currently guiding towards Griffin will no longer do so, simply continuing on the path they were on before the tracking was cut, making it pretty easy to avoid in most cases. This of course also means she can quickly chain flight activation into boost dash to rapidly cut tracking multiple times to protect herself from various situations, such as a barrage of projectiles or a melee character going ham with jump cancels or rainbows. Flight is also particularly strong, as not only does it go much further than normal grounded step, allowing her to reposition or get behind the opponents more easily, but it does not end spread wings, letting her continue to use all her strong options quickly. This ties into another critical trait that will be referenced many times throughout this guide, her ability to step cancel the startup of the flight. This effectively allows Griffin to access her flight-exclusive moveset incredibly fast while still close to the ground, letting her threaten the opponents with powerful and relatively safe options. I encourage you greatly to practice this low flight with step, and if you're a traditional fighting game player, you can somewhat consider this to be a tiger knee or some similar idea. Experiment with the movement of flight, such as going forwards to approach or surprise people, or quickly stepping backwards out of flight to try to bait whiffs or protect yourself. Griffin's 5A machine guns may feel a bit unintuitive at first compared to a bog standard beam rifle like Beta or Cherub. This comes from the fact that not only does she enter Vernier state while using them, which makes her feel somewhat sticky to play, but the mediocre projectile speed and tracking makes it feel unusable beyond mid to close range. While these things are sort of true, I want you to be sure to understand that Infect forms the very foundation of her game plan, especially in neutral. For starters, let's go ahead and explain some key strengths of it in reference to the downsides I had just mentioned. For making her enter Vernier and stopping her feet, Griffin can cancel it immediately with boost or step, or even directly into her flight if you have her second talent. The entire duration of the machine guns will still fire, allowing her to move or do most other attacks during it. This forms the entry level of her covering fire for both offense and defense. This might take a little bit of practice, but you'll want to get used to immediately canceling the start of this move pretty much no matter what to keep her feeling fluid. As for the second supposed downside with the poor tracking and distance, I don't necessarily have a direct counter-argument to it, it's just a fact that you shouldn't expect them to really hit anybody far away from you. They do require 10 hits to land a stagger for an easy confirm, though it's still not particularly reliable on its own. What they do possess in this regard, however, is an incredible range of the firing angle, meaning they are more than capable of tilting straight up or straight down to follow the opponent loosely no matter where they are relative to Griffin. This means that Griffin can do interesting things like zooming underneath or right above the opponent while doing additional options to make it difficult to see and deal with scenario. In this regard, you can kind of see it as a supplemental weapon, as it will almost always be used along other options, especially ranged. At worst, the long duration of firing will force opponents to spend some boost to avoid the shots. This leads into another strength as well that two of her other moves share in common, one of which we will get into next. They continue to fire even if Griffin is currently getting hit. This means that often she can cut for herself if she puts herself in a bad spot, leading to a generally net neutral interaction, but sometimes you can just get a full trade combo out of it. Talking about just machine gun on its own isn't necessarily that useful, so what are some moves that she can use after initiating with it? Griffin's feathers seem to be an underrated piece of her kit in my opinion. As similar to her 5A machine gun, they are a non-committal way to force movement, supplement her other options, or score stray hits that allow a confirm. This is because, similar to machine gun, she can cancel the startup immediately and all the feathers will fly towards the opponent, with a maximum of 8 at a time depending on how many she currently has available. Unlike her machine gun, however, the feathers have top-class tracking as well as travel speed, and also are arguably pretty hard to see on some stages, especially when there's a lot going on. On hit is a simple win-win for Griffin, as if only a few hit, she gets a long stagger she can confirm from range or melee at, or if most/all of them hit, she gets a high damage hard knockdown. While machine gun's typically the opening tool of many of her sequences, feathers, which can be used the same way, are often stronger as an option in between other things to create a sort of staggered pressure or barrage from multiple angles. This is because of the notable delay between deploying them and them actually going towards the opponent. Another strong application of feathers thanks to the delay is for Oki, which I won't go into too much detail on this beginner guide, but if timed correctly she can set them right as the opponent wakes up off the ground, then commit to another option like 8B, backwards flight into tornado, or tricky rainbow melee attempts. If she guesses wrong and gets hit, the feathers will likely hit the opponent and just trade it out. I do however need to bring up the main, if not only, issue with this move. It has 3 strong applications, all of which share the same ammo, as her highest damage combo ender also uses the same feathers. Therefore, it's essential to keep track of her ammo available when deciding to use it. Possibly the most satisfying sound clip in the game, her 5A laser in flight is a key component of Griffin's range threat to punish and harass. Its main 2 uses are punishing landings and cutting for her teammate, with its near instantaneous firing speed also making it difficult to react to. On hit, it immediately causes a hard knockdown, including the important fact it'll do so through super armor, with the only real downside being relatively low damage compared to punishing in other ways. With this fast knockdown, Griffin has the option to immediately go help her partner or run up to the downed opponent to run Oki, both of which are excellent options for her. This move is particularly effective when paired with the aforementioned ability to step her flight, letting her very quickly access it for only a little under half of her boost. While the laser can be somewhat unreliable at the edge of redlock and especially greenlock, she can use a forward stepping flight to rapidly get a bit closer to try to compensate for that. Other key things to note include that it also has excellent vertical guidance similar to her machine gun, letting her clip opponents right above or below her, as well as the fact that it has multiple shots, so she can double tap it to be sure it hits, or even switch lock in between to try to get a cheeky quick double knockdown. You'll be using this move a lot, especially if your partner is more front oriented, so get used to the reload times and its most effective ranges. Griffin's Tornado is one of the most versatile and irritating moves in the entire game, enforcing both her defense and offense simultaneously. This slow, far-traveling tornado has both incredible hit and block stun, but also OTG properties. If that wasn't enough for you, it also possesses Shooting Guard to ignore opponent projectiles and allows Griffin to confirm into a 1000 damage combo in the right conditions. While all these factors contribute to how good the move is, the slow and lingering nature of the tornado is truly what makes it so versatile. When running away to make space or avoid melee characters, Griffin can retreat backwards or sideways after sending it to the opponent, making sure they have to burn more boost to get away from it. On offense, Griffin can cancel into melee moves, step, or many other options and force a mix-up by coming to the sides or behind them. If timed right, it can even be a strong Oki tool on an enemy just getting up off the ground. When the tornado hits, Griffin basically has 2 options depending on the distance. If far away, she gets an easy and clean laser to get the knockdown and anywhere from 4 to 500 damage depending when the laser hits. If she's close, she can dive in with her flight melees and do a massive combo anywhere from 700 for a quick and safe combo or 1000 for full commitment. One thing to be wary of, however, is that due to how long the tornado lingers, you might mess up your partner by accidentally cutting their combo or them running into it before the current interaction, of which the high hit stun might cause big damage to them from opponents, so make sure to call it out if you're in voice. While most of Griffin's melee tools are very strong, and there are much more flashy ones like her neutral melee and flight, I wanted to highlight her forward melee in a practicality and versatility sense. One of the most important things to know is that the startup of it is only 3 frames, which if you don't know much about how frame data works, just know that's incredibly fast, by far one of the fastest moves in the game currently. This does come at the cost of relatively low priority, so it'll lose trades if done at poor spacing, but that's about the only downside besides having an ammo counter. She will not get the forward charge movement if she's out of ammo, and can get disastrously punished if she accidentally does it, so be careful. Its speed makes it a genuine threat on both her wake up and her opponents, or to protect herself from approaching melee characters, so many experienced with the matchup will be wary of it. This move also serves as a staple in her more difficult, optimized combos, so it makes the ammo count important yet again. Now that we've examined 6 of her most important moves, let's carve them into her basic game plan at an entry level. She has plenty of other moves that are very strong and useful, so I recommend messing with them yourself or checking the wiki to read about their use and data. Again, I have that below. We're going to look at some key points to remember in various parts of a match. We'll start with offense, as there's a good chance it's one of the main reasons you pick the character up to begin with. In the mid to close range, try to always use opening tools like machine gun or feathers first by immediately canceling the startup to initiate and force movement before committing to higher risk options like melee. Use low step flight to put out a safe tornado and react to however the opponent's choosing to deal with it. If they avoid it, neutral just continues, but if they get hit or block it, you can then begin the next layer of your offense. Actively seek landings, moves that place the opponent in vernier state, or cut for your partner for a free laser knockdown. And finally, don't get too addicted or dead set on her incredibly high melee damage potential. Griffin is more than capable of carrying a match with only ranged options and punishes. Let's take a look at defense now. Use the tracking code of flight activation to keep yourself safe at most distances, and vary up the incredibly strong movement of spread wings, especially backwards and sideways steps to make you difficult to pin down. Even though Griffin's fantastic at 1v1 scenarios, if you lose too many interactions, give your ego a break and go regroup with your partner. Remember that she has multiple moves she can throw out in danger, like 8B with its fast startup, machine gun or feathers that can cut for herself, or tornado to make them waste more boost or trap any linear movement. There is a bit of extra landing delay when Griffin cancels her flight by re-inputting it, so if possible make sure to boost dash before hitting the ground to recover more quickly, as well as having an extra movement to avoid projectiles. There's also a couple other little things I want to touch on that I can't really categorize, so we're just going to call this one miscellaneous. First, practice her combo execution as well as experiment with different cancel routes and sequences. She is a very open-ended character. Always, always, always switch your lock when you score a big hit to determine an appropriate combo or to defend yourself or your teammate. If they are safe and healthy, feel free to lean into Griffin's higher potential routes and Oki. And finally, don't give up or get frustrated too easily. Griffin is a complex character with a lot to learn contextually, and Lord knows it's taken me a bunch, and still going. So go ahead and try to commit all these basic ideas to memory when you're playing games as Griffin, and feel free to only lean into a few of them at a time if that's a little bit easier to process. With the beginner game plan out of the way and forcing you to see my mediocre gameplay that I just grabbed off the top of my replay history, we can move ahead to some of her most basic combos. Keep in mind that when I say basic combos, I really do mean it. Don't expect to see any of those crazy 1.8k Griffin bombos you might have seen on his Twitter clip in here. Not only is this just a guide for beginners, but at risk of sounding like the stereotypical, boring old fighting game player, I don't view combos as necessarily as important as most other aspects of your gameplay. If you're constantly getting cooked from poor fundamentals and not getting those touches to begin with, then what's the point? I will slowly be adding more advanced combos to her wiki page, however, and if people really want it, I guess I can make a full combo video in the future. I'm going to separate the combos into ranged openers and melee openers, so take a look in the top corner of the screen for the type of combo, and the bottom for the actual notation and any notes if applicable. I'm also using numpad notation, similar to that of the Gundam Versus series that Starward originates from, so if there's a bit of confusion there, feel free to once again just check the wiki for the full explanation. There isn't much more for me to say here, so let's go. Alrighty, well that was the last of the fun stuff. We're going to wrap it up with 2 upkeep things that you will probably only really need to see and hear once: talent levels and burst selection. Let's start with talents to see how many resources you really want to or need to commit towards Griffin. If for some reason you immediately click to this section of the beginner guide, I know which one of 2 questions you probably have, so I'll answer both immediately. Griffin is still incredibly strong at T0, and she doesn't really have what you'd consider a quote necessary talent beyond that. There's certainly some quality of life improvements she gets through the talent system, but nothing character warping like say Yamin is guilty of. Talent 1 unlocks her shooting combo ender, where she rushes forward with her talents quickly. With its relatively low down value per hit, it is a pretty useful combo filler tool or to convert easy confirms with when you're unsure or unprepared for the prior hits to land. For these reasons, it's nice to have as an option, though does tend to lead to lower damage combos, albeit potentially faster and therefore safer. Talent 2 allows Griffin to cancel her 5A machine gun or 5AB feathers directly into spread wings, cutting out the middleman of otherwise needing to boost or step cancel them to start flight shenanigans. While this seems like a direct upgrade in most regards as it requires less boost on her part, admittedly she would usually prefer to do the boost dash or step between it anyways for better movement and repositioning. Talent 3 gives her 5A machine gun 1 extra ammo, which includes her directional machine gun while in flight. The machine gun is a foundational component of her game plan, so it's always nice to have extra ammo if needed, though admittedly those instances aren't going to come up very often unless you're panicking a lot. It might have a bit more value to you if you're a very up close and pressure oriented style Griffin, but personally I don't consider it that important. Talent 4 gives her 1 more ammo of her laser, which in my opinion is probably her best available upgrade. Again, as I said prior, I don't think it's necessary by any means, but there's no doubt that this is one of the most important weapons to her identity, and there are way more times where the extra ammo will come up here compared to the T3 machine gun one. At worst, it lets you take some extra pot shots here and there during the match. Now Talent 5 is jokingly considered a pay-to-lose upgrade, unlocking an alternate burst skill that she gains access to while in spread wings. The reason this upgrade is generally disliked is that the alternate burst skill where she drags her opponent along the floor is significantly less evasive than the normal one, as she just slides in a straight line instead of moving all around. Also, she can only use this one when she's in flight now with no access to the original, making her have to be very careful when she's trying to convert. There are, however, 2 upsides to this super. One being that it actually front loads the damage a bit better to execute a low damage opponent as fast as possible, and the other being that it simply looks really sick. This will cap off the talent section, and I hope I succeeded in convincing you that you can enjoy trying to learn Griffin without sinking many valuable materials in. Let's get to the final informational section of this guide with which burst core, or cores, we should be using. We'll come right out of the gate with more or less her best option, Fighting Burst. I would present, however, the caveat that it is a bit more difficult to use properly for new players, to the point where one could say it's more high risk, high reward for them. This is almost the only burst that experienced Griffin players will use, but if you aren't confident enough yet in her movement, options, or playing close to the opponents, maybe hold off for a bit until that improves. So why is it so good? Griffin already has high priority and relatively fast melee options, making the distance, speed, and tracking of Fighting Burst only improve their lethality. Similarly, being able to cancel shooting skills like machine gun or feathers directly into melee tools contributes to a watertight offense. Paired with the fact that fighting can't be red shielded, Griffin can keep pressing the attack and smothering opponents until she finally gets the hit. When she gets the hit, she might possibly have the highest consistent kill combos in the game, able to reach dizzying heights of damage with the damage buff. In Motion Burst we have the safer option for her, as it bolsters arguably one of her best assets outside of Burst, her mobility. Due to Griffin's nature of being in flux between up-close aggression or backline zoning, Motion allows her to switch even more rapidly and be a threat basically anywhere on even the largest maps in the game. For a beginner in particular, a big selling point on Motion is that it allows her to survive and run away from nearly anything in the game safely. While that is more of a defensive aspect, the improved speed does still allow her to swoop in and steal some melee hits as well. While it is still a very strong option on its own, Motion might be best considered the, quote, training wheels choice before graduating onwards to fighting. We're already out of the good options for Griffin now, so let's just quickly cover the other ones, just in case you don't have anything else to work with, starting with the default burst core, Balanced. It's fine, as you would imagine, as Griffin can get a little bit out of all of its aspects thanks to her well-rounded kit. I would definitely still prioritize getting Fighting or Motion to replace this as fast as you can, but don't sweat it too much. When it comes to shooting, Griffin already possesses a lot of ammo and an already wide array of available weapons, so she doesn't particularly need the improved uptime for them. This isn't to say that shooting isn't somewhat playable on her, as it can make her an incredibly irritating spammy back during its duration, and it does make laser more consistent thanks to the red lock range improvement. If someone tended to play an extremely passive Griffin, I could almost see a use case here, but it's just outclassed by Motion in that regard, and probably still fighting too. Last and least, we end on Survival Burst, which frankly just doesn't make her as scary as any other option does. While the lock-on reduction does allow her to be more safe when using ranged weapons, it doesn't really make them any more threatening on their own. Their flaws are still intact. The only other potential benefit is making an already tanky character a bit more tanky to play scrappy up close a little more easily, but even that idea is just shut down, again, by the existence of fighting in motion. Just don't let me catch you in the streets with this shit on, okay? I'm sure you understand now that the burst race is basically just between fighting and motion, the latter of which I'm only really saying because we're coming from the angle of a new player. And with that, that's gonna be the end of this beginner guide for Griffin and Starward. I hope you learned something and that I was able to explain most basic options and concepts for her. This took a good amount of time to work on, and I really hope that came across despite some errors and warts by the end. Admittedly, Griffin has slowly become one of my favorite fighting game characters of all time in my long-time journey to be an okay player in as many fighting games as possible. I'd like to make at least a few more of these over time for some of the other characters I play the most, though we'll see how long until then. It is a damn shame that I can't sneak so much bird stuff into any of those other characters though, so need a little bit of motivation. If you have any questions or feedback, dump them in the comments like any normal-ish person would, or use one of the ats or whatever on the screen right now. Just have fun, and good luck on your road to being the coolest bird in town.